Tonight we're going in-depth on a big day involving an Oklahoma case at the U.S. Supreme Court. The nation's highest court reviewed a ruling by the Oklahoma State Supreme Court that says St. Isidore of Seville Online Catholic Charter School is unconstitutional. It's a case that could change how education is carried out, not just in Oklahoma, but in 47 other states that have charter school programs just like ours. An Oklahoma issue more than 2 years in the making reached the U.S. Supreme Court Wednesday.
This does strike me as a much more comprehensive involvement, and I wonder what case do you think supports the position with respect to that level of involvement?
Justices reviewed the Oklahoma Supreme Court's decision that states the Catholic Church cannot open a religious charter school because it violates the separation of church and state.
You can't treat religious people and religious institutions and religious speech as second class in the United States.
Supporters of St. Isidore argue that a religious charter school would operate similar to how hospitals with religious affiliations function now. They can perform a public service while openly professing their faith. They also don't turn away people needing their services just because they don't believe. They also pointed to schools like Bishop Kelly in Tulsa as proof the Catholic Church can deliver a non-discriminatory quality education in a state that's seen poor academic rankings.
So St. Isidore allows exceptions for anyone that doesn't want to attend Mass. That's on page 27 of the student handbook. In addition, it does not require students to affirm its religious beliefs.
Attorney General Gentner Drummond sued the state charter school board for approving the school, saying St. Isidore would allow students to be converted to Catholic doctrine using state funds that are supposed to be religiously neutral.
This is a bridge too far, that we cannot have non-secular charter schools. They have to be, they must be non-secular charter schools.
The court's conservative majority argued the school would not just be allowed to teach only from the Bible. It must also meet state standards on reading, math, science, and more.
Because the First Amendment, specifically the Free Exercise Clause, protects the right of religious organizations to be treated equally with others.
3 liberal justices on the court say charter schools are public schools, and there have been strict rules in place for years when it comes to using a public school classroom for religious purposes. Here in Green Country, supporters and opponents of St. Isidore and the precedent that it could set gave their opinions on the case and shared their hopes and concerns with our Devin Lyon.
We believe that our country's promise of the separation of church and state means that our public schools must remain free from religious indoctrination and open to all students.
They don't get to punish people because of their religious beliefs. Taxpayers should decide where their taxpayer dollars go to educate their children.
State leaders, parents, and religious leaders throughout Oklahoma are divided on the case surrounding St. Isidore of Seville Virtual Catholic Charter School.
When taxpayer dollars are used to fund religious charter schools, we blur the vital boundary between church and state.
Wednesday morning, more than a dozen parents and church leaders held a news conference in Tulsa speaking against the charter school.
It opens the door to discrimination against students, families, and educators, and it drains resources from the public schools that need them most.
They presented a statement signed by more than 110 Oklahoma religious leaders who are against any tax dollars going to a religious institution, even if it's educational. They say the charter school would be disastrous for the religious freedom of students.
When the government funds religion, it inevitably tries to regulate it.
But not everyone agrees.
The reality is, if you don't want to send your kids there, don't send your kids there. But for the parents that want to send their kids to those schools, we should be protecting those rights, giving them those opportunities, giving them those options, not having the government step in and say, no, because you are a Christian, we're not going to allow this opportunity.
State Superintendent Ryan Walters, State Representative Gabe Woolley, and Tulsa Charter School parent Shelley Gwartney all support the virtual Catholic charter school.
When I think of a religious charter school, I think of school choice. I think of this being another option for parents to choose to enroll their children in or to not.
Charter schools, again, are going to disrupt the system because we're proving we can do high quality education on a shoestring budget. We don't need more money in our public school system. We need to just do it the right way.
They say St. Isidore would allow more options to parents and benefit the free market educational system in Oklahoma. All sides believe the decision is critical.
Justice Amy Coney Barrett recused herself from the hearing today. She taught at the law school, helping make the arguments for the creation of St. Isidore. All eyes now are on Chief Justice John Roberts. To help his side try to win, Attorney General Gentner Drummond hired this man, a mentee of John Roberts, Gregory Garr, to cater his arguments to Roberts. The 3 liberal justices who were ready to vote down the school agreed with some of the arguments that Garr was making. Now, Justices Thomas, Alito, Roberts, and Gorsuch openly expressed favor toward St. Isidore, but when Garr spoke, Roberts himself did not say a word. It was hard to see if Garr's hiring worked in this case. If there is a 4-4 split, the school will still be deemed unconstitutional. One of the biggest arguments Attorney General Gentner Drummond has been making against the creation of St. Isidore is that it would allow Muslim families to set up a taxpayer-funded school that would teach Sharia law. Justice Kavanaugh clearly was outraged by that comparison and made his feelings known.
Comment about strife. I just want to explore that for a second, because it seems like strife could also come when people who are religious feel like they're being excluded because they're religious, whether it's the Muslim family who is aware of the comments that were made here, or the Catholic school group that says, gee, we just want to have a charter school like the environmental group and the Chinese immersion group and this math group. And I think you're missing a portion of the country when you say strife would not result from that kind of outcome.
The Supreme Court issues rulings in all of its cases at the end of their term, which is in mid to late June. If there is a heavy caseload, that can go into early July.